Republican...
I ask unanimous consent that further proceedings in the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection, and the Republican whip is recognized.
And for my next act.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say a few words in support of the continuing resolution that the House of Representatives passed that we're going to be voting on here in an hour or so. It's H.J. Resolution 48. This is the second short-term funding extension to prevent a government shutdown while our congressional leaders are negotiating to try to reach an agreement on a long-term plan to keep our government working through the end of this fiscal year, ending in September. The short and long-term continuing resolutions under discussion are leftover work from 2010 to finish the job of funding the government, as I said, through the end of this fiscal year. Notably, the spending cuts that have been achieved so far are really the first meaningful spending cuts that Congress has passed since the Deficit Reduction Act, which was enacted in February of 2006. The House passed 3-week CR, or continuing resolution, which runs until April 8th, includes $6 billion in spending cuts, which will keep the Congress on track to implement the overall $61 billion in spending reductions which are included in the long-term CR. Enactment of this short-term measure would mean that in just 5 weeks we will have cut $10 billion from this year's spending. And because of the adjustment in the baseline, that means that over a 10-year period of time, we will have saved the taxpayers $140 billion. Now, even in Washington, D.C., that's real money. The cuts in H.J. Resolution 48 include funding rescissions, reductions, and program terminations. It also eliminates earmark accounts within the Agriculture, Commerce, Justice, Science, Financial Services, General Government, and Interior Subcommittee jurisdictions. It reduces or terminates 25 programs for a savings of $3.5 billion and eliminates $2.6 billion in earmark account funding. All in all, a pretty good day's work. While the spending cuts, we could argue, are not large relative to the overall budget, as I said before, they will amount to $140 billion in savings over 10 years. And so, Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to support this ability to cut funding, something that we don't often have the opportunity to do. Why do we need to do this? Well, we all know that, first of all, we've got a gross federal debt exceeding $14 trillion. In fact, we're piling up debt at such a fast rate that soon the administration says, and the administration has, the President has asked us to increase the debt ceiling of the United States because of the amount of debt that we keep adding to that exists. Obviously, we're living beyond our means. We have to borrow $4 billion a day, or another way to look at it is every dollar that we spend here, we have to borrow 42 cents of that from someone else, and about half of that borrowing occurs from foreign nations. If you want to look at how the debt relates to the American citizens, it's equal to $45,500 per American. Or if you want to relate it just to those who pay taxes, it's $127,000 for every taxpayer in the United States. That's how big our debt is. And that money has to be paid back. This is not something that just is out there in the ether somewhere. Our creditors will want to be paid back when the bonds that we have issued become due. It's either going to be us here in Congress and the President deciding how to reorder our priorities so that we get our fiscal house in order, or eventually the bond buyers are going to do it for us by demanding far higher interest rates in order to buy our debt. And it's not just a fiscal problem. It's a national security problem. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullen, has made the point, and I'll quote, "I believe that our debt is the greatest threat to our national security." Now, why does he say that? Well, there are two basic reasons why. If we don't have the economic capability of funding all of the national security requirements that we have, we no longer are the world's leading power, able to project our authority throughout the world, our ability to help others, as well as defend ourselves. And second, when we get into hock with other countries, become their debtors, our ability to influence their decisions in the world is diminished. It's very hard for us to go to the Chinese, who hold a couple $1 trillion of our debt, I think it's a figure roughly in that neighborhood, and say, we demand that you support us in the United Nations Security Council to impose sanctions on Iran. It's pretty easy for them to just say, oh, really? How about that debt that you owe us? How about if you pay a little higher interest rate on that money? Well, of course, paying a higher interest rate would devastate both our federal budget and our economy. So it impacts our ability to influence others around the world, thereby also influencing our national security. Finally, the impact of the cuts that we're making today when we pass this legislation on job creation in our country. There is a direct relationship between government spending on the one hand, going into debt, and job creation on the other. It's one of the reasons we have the high unemployment that we have today. In fact, if you look at a chart, there is an absolute direct correlation between the unemployment in our country and the deficit spending and debt in our country. That's why we have to get that lowered. And when we reduce the amount of debt and we spend less, which is what this legislation will do, we can leave the money in the private sector, enabling private businesses to invest that money, including in jobs, thereby not only hiring more people but assisting our economy to grow. Stanford economist John Taylor has shown this direct correlation in his work between these spending cuts and increased employment. He recently released an analysis, and it's titled, Why a Credible Budget Strategy Will Reduce Unemployment and Increase Economic Growth. That's the title. And it concluded that the spending cuts in H.R. 1, which is the underlying continuing resolution in the House, and I'm quoting now, will increase economic growth and employment as the federal government begins to put its fiscal house in order and encourage job-producing private sector investment, end of quote. He is, by the way, among 150 top economists in the United States who signed a statement arguing for a change in direction and immediate action, and I'm quoting now, to begin to slow government spending, reduce uncertainty, and support the creation of new private sector jobs, end of quote. Mr. President, we can begin that process by adopting the legislation that's before us here in another hour or so. It will, as I say, cut an additional $6 billion so that the total in this last month and 1 week will be $10 billion in spending cuts that will, over a 10-year period of time, save the taxpayers $140 billion. All in all, a good day's work, and I urge my colleagues to support the legislation. Mr. President, I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll of the Senate.
Mr. Kaka. About 45 minutes away here in the Senate on a scheduled vote on temporary spending to fund the federal government for 3 weeks. The latest stopgap measure expires tomorrow. It'll be the 6th short-term measure to pay for operations for the government through this fiscal year, which ends September 30th. The Congressional Quarterly writing that work continues on an effort to write a measure that will go through the end of this fiscal year, September 30th. House Speaker John Boehner and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid have made conciliatory gestures, but some of their rank and file show no appetite for compromise. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Capitol, the House is debating right now a measure that would prohibit federal funding of national public radio. It would also bar the use of federal funds to acquire radio content. You can watch the House live on C-SPAN. A little less than an hour ago, President Obama stopped by the Japanese embassy in Washington to sign a condolence book. A little bit later on, about 3:30 Eastern Time, we expect the president live in the White House Rose Garden talking about the natural disaster in Japan and the nuclear plant crisis there. We'll have that live on C-SPAN 3. And right after that, we plan to go to a Senate Homeland Security Committee hearing about the FEMA preparedness, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and what's happened with that agency since Hurricane Katrina.
Quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection, and the senator from New York is recognized.
Mr. President, I rise to speak about the current debate over the current federal budget. On Tuesday, a very telling and very troubling vote was held in the House of Representatives. In order to pass the 3-week continuing resolution needed to avert a government shutdown, which we're considering here in the Senate today, Thank you, Mr. President. Which we're considering here in the Senate today, Speaker Boehner was forced to rely on votes from House Democrats. He had to do so because conservative Republicans abandoned their party leadership in droves. They fumed that the measure lacked special interest add-ons dealing with ideological issues like abortion and net neutrality and global warming. In all, 54 conservative Republicans rejected the measure, even though it was necessary to avert a shutdown, even though their own leadership negotiated the proposal, and even though it included $6 billion in additional cuts to domestic discretionary spending. This is a bad omen. Last week, the Senate held 2 test votes, one on H.R. 1 and one on a Democratic alternative. We knew that neither proposal would have the votes to pass, and sure enough, both went down. The purpose of those votes was to make it clear that both sides' opening bids in this debate were non-starters, and thus pave the way for a serious and good-faith compromise. But unfortunately, an intense ideological tail continues to wag the dog over in the House of Representatives. Speaker Boehner had hoped that after H.R. 1 failed in the Senate, it would convince his conservatives of the need to compromise. Instead, those conservatives have only dug their heels in further. And that's no way to improve our nation's fiscal footing. Speaker Boehner has said in no uncertain terms that he wants to avoid a shutdown, and I believe him. He's a good, honest man. The problem is a large percentage of those in his party think compromise is a 4-letter word. I don't envy the position the Speaker is in, but he is going to have to make a choice. This isn't a yellow woods in Robert Frost's poem. But there are 2 divergent roads, and sorry, Speaker Boehner can't travel both. He can cater to the Tea Party element, and as Congressman Mike Pence has suggested, pick a fight that will inevitably cause a shutdown on April 8th. That's one path. Or he can abandon the Tea Party in these negotiations and forge a consensus among more moderate Republicans and a group of Democrats. I think we all know which road he should choose. Speaker Boehner wouldn't have been able to pass this short-term measure without Democratic votes, and he won't be able to pass a long-term one without Democratic votes either. Throughout this debate, Democrats have repeatedly shown a willingness to negotiate, a willingness to meet Republicans somewhere in the middle. And yet, the rank and file of the House GOP has been utterly unrelenting. They've wrapped their arms around the discredited, reckless approach advanced by H.R. 1, and they won't let go. In fact, they just keep squeezing harder. Worse, the last few days have taught us that spending cuts alone will not bring a compromise. The new demand from the far right is that we go along with all their extraneous riders. These riders don't belong on a budget bill, but they were shoehorned into H.R. 1 anyway. Now the hardliners want them in the final deal. This is why a compromise has been so hard to come by on the budget. It's because Republicans want more than spending cuts. They want to impose their entire social agenda on the back of a must-pass budget. Those on the right are entitled to their policy positions, but there's a time and a place to debate these issues, and, Mr. President, this ain't it. If this debate were only about spending cuts, we'd probably come to an agreement before long. But we will have a hard time coming to an agreement if those on the hard right treat the budget as an opportunity to enact a far-ranging agenda. Many Republicans in the House recognize the unreasonableness of the hardliners, to their credit. Steve LaTourette of Ohio said passing the 3-week stopgap was, quote, exactly what people expect us to do. Find cuts and continue to talk, unquote. Michael Grimm, a very bright freshman from my home state of New York, said the Tea Party lawmakers were making, quote, a big mistake, unquote. This is proof positive that there are reasonable Republicans in the House, including some reasonable freshmen like Mr. Grimm, who, along with a group of Democrats, can provide Speaker Boehner with the way around the Tea Party. In order to avoid a dead end on these budget talks, Speaker Boehner should abandon the Tea Party and work to forge a bipartisan consensus. It's the only way out of this bind. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
The Majority Leader is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that the vote on the continuing resolution start at 2:45. We will have, Mr. President, the time will run as if it started at 3 o'clock. But there are some problems with a few senders, so I ask consent that the vote start at 2:45.
Without objection, so ordered.
What time is left on the Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
I ask the time until 2:45 be divided equally between Democrats and Republicans.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Akaka.
just heard Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid say that the vote on the temporary spending measure is expected a little bit earlier than we thought, at 2:45 Eastern rather than 3 o'clock. The temporary measure would fund the federal government for 3 weeks. It'll be the 6th short-term measure to pay for continuing operations this budget year. After that, the Senate will go on to consider a judicial nomination, Amy Berman Jackson, to be a U.S. District Judge for the District of Columbia. A vote is expected here shortly in the Senate on a temporary spending measure to fund the federal government for 3 weeks. That's expected at 2:45 Eastern Time. The Associated Press writing that President Obama says Americans are heartbroken over the disaster in Japan and are confident that the country will rebuild. The president wrote that message in a condolence book at the embassy, the Japanese embassy in Washington today. He also is going to make a statement in the White House Rose Garden on the Japan's nuclear crisis. We're going to have that live for you on C-SPAN 3 at 3:30 Eastern Time. Also live right after that, a Senate Homeland Security Committee meeting on FEMA preparedness. The head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Craig Fugate, will testify, along with how the agency is doing since Hurricane Katrina.
Initiated.
Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will read the bill for the third and final time.
Calendar number 20, H.J. Res. 48, making further continuing
President,
appropriations for
ask
fiscal year
consent
2011 for
reading.
the purpose.
Without
Ask the
objection.
yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be so. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Beckich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, Mr. Brown of Ohio, Mr. Berg, Ms. Cantwell, Mr. Cardin.
Aye.
Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Dement, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Ensign, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Noe, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Carey, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Snow. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Mr. Warner. Mr. Webb. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Ms. Collins. Ms. Cook.
I'm in.
Senators voting in the affirmative: Alexander, Bennett, Bingaman, Burr, Cardin, Chambliss, Coates, Collins, Durbin, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kyle, Lugar, Manchin, McConnell, Schumer, and Udall of New Mexico. Senators voting in the negative: Ensign, Inhofe, and Paul. Mr. Rubio, no.
We should talk. Okay.
Mr. Leahy, aye. Ms. Landrieu, aye. Mr. Cochran, aye. Mr. Bozeman? Aye. Mr. Blumenthal? Mr. Blumenthal? Aye. Mr. Brown in Massachusetts? Aye. Mr. Sanders? Mr. Sanders? No. Mr. Roberts? Aye. Mr. Cornyn? Aye. Mr. Harkin? Aye. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island? Aye. Ms. Mikulski? Ms. Mikulski? Aye. Mr. Warner? Mr. Warner? Aye. Mr. Shelby? Mr. Shelby? Aye. Mr. Isaacson? Aye. Mr. Vitter? Aye. Mr. Coburn? Mr. Coburn? Aye. Mr. McCain? Mr. Corker? Mr. Corker? Aye. Mr. McCain? Mr. McCain? Aye. Mrs. Shaheen? Mrs. Shaheen? Aye. Mr. Lee? No. Mr. Barrasso? Aye. Mr. Rockefeller? No. Mr. Tester? Aye. Mr. Dement? No. Ms. Murkowski? Aye. Mr. Webb. Mr. Webb, aye. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Johans, aye. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Nelson, Nebraska, aye. Aye. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Hatch, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Mr. Akaka, aye. Mr. Sessions, aye.